Good day, everyone. My name is Bernadette Seno from Group 4, and for today, we are going to report about the Filipino concept of Kapwa, Loob, and core Filipino values. So, these are the learning materials that we got for our topic, and here are the learning outcomes to be attained throughout and at the end of the reporting. First is to explain and discuss the Filipino concept and core Filipino values and virtues. Second is to recognize the importance of Filipino values and virtues. But before we proceed to our topic, let's have first the motivation or word of the day by Senator John Kenry that says, values are not just words. Values are what we live by. They're about the causes that we champion and the people we fight for. Yes, it's definitely true that our values are not just the things that are spoken, but values are the actions that we present to other people as a representation of our inner self or characteristic. Our culture may vary due to different countries that dominate us, but our values as Filipinos remain intact no matter how many ages or generations have passed. And these values have provide a unique flavor to the identity of every Filipino, which makes us unique individuals.
What is Filipino concept of Kapwa? In Filipino, according to Enrique's 1992, Kapwa is a unity of self and others. The English others is actually used in opposition to the self and implies the recognition to the self as a separate identity. In contrast, Kapwa is a recognition of shared identity and inner shared self with others. The word kapwa refers us to that space that we shared with others as fellow Filipinos and fellow human beings, sensing that space as being both a psych and a physical space. It means connecting oneself with others, feelings oneself is another, and having sense of shared identity, a shared inner self, that sense of having a common human identity, community, and destiny lies deep in our sight. It's the translation in a particular culture and history of a universal truth that tells us to treat others the way we ourselves want to be treated because at our innermost core we have a shared humanity.
Filipino concept of loob. Mercado 1974 had identified the Filipinos concept of loob in twofold. First, loob is holistic. Secondly, loob is interior. The Filipinos loob is connected to the intellectual, volitional, emotion, and ethical aspect of life. Emotion and thoughts were integrated and not dualistic in approach. Thoughts, actions, and words were all related with each other. Loob is simply the person, well, and it the most obvious K term in Filipino virtue ethics because so many Filipino virtues are the form of loob such as kagandahang loob, utang na loob, lakas ng loob, as well as pakiramdam and hiya. However, they can also negative description of loob such as masamang loob or mahinang loob.
Good day, everyone. My name is Nova Claire S. Palasan, and today I will be discussing about the core Filipino values. So, what values is? They are what the people desire, wanted to have, and wanted to attain. Filipino values are the objects of the people's interest, desire, preference, and aspiration. They are the things Filipinos consider important and desirable in life. So here are the core Filipino values. First, humor and positivity. This famous trait is the ability of Filipinos to find humor in everything. It sheds light on the optimism and positivity of Filipinos in whatever situation they are in so as to remain determined in going through struggles or challenges. Second is flexibility, adaptability, discipline, and creativity. So Filipinos adapt to different sets of standardized rule or procedures. They are known to follow a natural clock or organic sense of time, doing things in the time they feel is right. They are present and future oriented when attends to a task for requirement at the time and often in preparation for future engagements. Filipinos do not tend to dwell in the past unless it serves to help them understand the present and future. This allows the Filipino to adapt and integrate well into different cultures and create effective case by case schedules. Third is ability to survive and thrive. Filipinos have survived the rule of numerous colonial and imperial countries of their time, such as the United States, Spain, and Japan. Consequently, Filipinos have developed a sense of resourcefulness or the ability to survive and thrive irrespective of the political context. They have an extraordinary ability to thrive despite perceived or actual material, social, or political limitations. Okay, next is hard work and industriousness. With resourcefulness comes hard work. Filipinos are very determined and persevering in accomplishing whatever they set their minds to. Lastly is hospitality. Foreigners who come to visit the Philippines speak of Filipinos going out of their way to help them when lost, or the heartwarming generosity of a Filipino family hosting a visitor in their home.
Virtues. So a virtue or vice is a habit that is specific to a rational human being. It is a Filipino trait that is deemed to be morally good or simply conform to the standard of behavior of doing what is good. So virtues itself are attitudes, dispositions, or character traits that enable us to be and to act in ways that we develop this potential. They enable us to pursue the ideals we have adopted, like honesty, courage, compassion, generosity, fidelity, integrity, fairness, self-control, and prudence. However, here are some Filipino values which Filipinos has been practiced. So first we have kagandahang loob. This word is literally translated as beauty of will. The beauty of the will in this context is determined by one's relationship towards the kapwa or towards the others. The word kagandahan has its root in ganda, which means beauty. On the other hand, loob means insight. In another word, kagandahang loob may be translated as beauty within. Someone who has genuine concern for others and the willingness to help in times of need is a person who has kagandahang loob. So in Filipino, kagandahang loob are similar to kindness or kabaitan, kabutihan, at mabuting pakikitungo. But the source of its patterns comes from a mother's love and concern for her child, most especially during the child's weakness and infancy. The next one is utang na loob. This word is literally translated as debt to feel. It is the natural response to kagandahang loob. It is a self-imposed obligation to give back the same kind of kagandahang loob to the person who has shown it to you. In another hand, it is a sense of obligation to return a favor you owed to someone. When utang na loob is returned with interest, it is more than what is expected. It can bring about a circular dynamic or a positive feedback loop between two persons where the one who previously showed kagandahang loob is now the one with utang na loob. Then it oscillates back and forth, strengthening the relationship in the process. At some point, utang na loob is one of the values deeply practiced among Filipinos. Helping one who is in dire need is a value that is priceless, that a feeling of indebtedness is created in the other hand. There is a feeling of reciprocity that an inaction from the person helped will be branded as walang utang na loob.
Another Filipino virtue is the pakikiramdam. The nearest translation is the relational sensitivity or empathy. It is about being skilled in reading the other person's feeling and guessing his or her inner state. It requires receptivity to any nonverbal cues, such as subtle of facial expressions, tone of voice, and bodily gestures. So this pakikiramdam is somewhat an inner tool on the way we deal or consider other people's feeling. This pakikiramdam is all about empathy, putting ourselves in someone's shoes or situation. It is also an awareness of how the other person feels and is very key element of the mental makeup of every Filipino. Next is the hiya. Hiya has been variously translated as embarrassment or shame. The virtue of hiya controls and restrains verbal communication to preserve the dignity of the kapwa. It is the most often encountered in verbal communication, but on a more general level. It is about restraining any individualistic or selfish impulse to put the welfare of the kapwa first. As we observe, Filipino are very sensitive to personal affront. We Filipino try as much as possible to avoid feeling hiya. So hiya is a kind of anxiety, a fear of being left exposed, unprotected, and unaccepted. Hiya is one value that regulates the Filipino social behavior. Just as one is very careful not to be subjected to embarrassment or mapahiya, must also make it a point not to cause another person's embarrassment.
Next is lakas ng loob or bahala na. Lakas ng loob is literally translated as courage and bahala na is sometimes translated as fatalism or resignation. But it is translated more positively as courage to face uncertainty. Like hiya, these two can degenerate into negative concepts when separated from the whole scheme of Filipino virtue ethics. Basically, lakas ng loob is one of the attributes that Filipino possesses and apply to their daily lives. It is having the courage to face certain situations and problems that may come no matter how uncertain we are to overcome that situation. We Filipinos always have initiative to go for it and face that problem with our utmost courage because we believe and trust ourselves that we can do it. Like for instance, ibutang nato mga OFW. What makes our OFW migrate to other countries and work there? Well, it's because they have certain courage to work there and adapt to different cultures in order to provide sustenance and daily needs to their family, even if it means leaving their family behind. So in that particular situation, we can see that OFW is never easy. But due to the courage that Filipino has to dedicate and even risk their lives is nahimo nilang mag-OFW because they acquire the attributes of lakas ng loob to face situations no matter how hard it can be. Another one is bahala na. This is also one of the attitude that we Filipino has and we sometimes use this as an expression to say bahala na if we're uncertain about particular thing. However, this bahala na can be viewed into two different concepts, the negative and positive concept. When we say negative concept, bahala na is a form of fatalism or resignation from personal responsibilities or kanabitang ginadaganan na to tong problema or ginaneglect na tong responsibilities because we don't have courage to face them or we don't know what to do. So we just disregard that thought, that situation, and leave everything to luck. But on the contrary, bahala na is not just pure negative. It is also functionally a positive response of Filipinos to uncertainty. So magamit Japon na to siya na positive concept. Bahala na is derived from the word bathala, which means we've done our best, we've done everything on our power, and we leave the rest to the higher being. Because we Filipinos, believing in God, tend to rely more on Him than ourselves. We abide deep faith on Him that He will take care of everything, will provide good fortune for our struggles against difficulties. Truly, that there are times in our life when we are faced in difficult situations or major decisions that we would just say, bahala na. But it doesn't mean that we don't care about the situation or it doesn't matter what would be the outcome of our decisions. But it's just we've done everything our best on our power, but we are not sure if that decision is best for the situation. So we just leave everything to our higher being and abide deep faith on Him. So that's basically the idea of lakas ng loob and bahala na. Next Filipino virtue is pagkakaisa. Pagkakaisa means unity or oneness. It is the goal or telos of Filipino virtue ethics. The Filipino draws the loob and kapwa closer to each other so that their wills will become one in terms of willing their good and in the commitment to preserve and strengthen their relations. Filipinos are naturally born having to unite with their fellow Filipinos or pagkakaisa sa kapwa, whether their family, friends, neighbors, or people in the community. We always have that need and urge inside to draw closer to people because it is our nature, helping each other in times of problems, magkaisa o magdadamayan sa panahon sa mga calamities or disasters. So, nadya sa tong kinaiya ang makig-usa sa atong isig katao o magtinabanga because it is our virtues as Filipinos. We can't leave someone behind struggling and fighting against difficulties. We would always offer our hand even if they don't ask for it because we have empathy and genuine emotions to help them. And this, I think, one of the best virtues of Filipinos that makes our Filipino culture blooms for a reason that we have unity. Now that we've discussed the Filipino values and virtues, let's try to understand how important it is to our culture as Filipinos. Filipino values do really have a great significance to the Filipino way of life and to the growth and success of Filipinos. The practice of passing down the Filipino values also became the culture of every Filipino. So that is why most values and virtues are noticeably traditional. Thus, it preserves not only the positive traits that most Filipino possess, like being hospitable and respectful, but it also corrects the negative ones. As what I've mentioned earlier, our country, Philippines, has been colonized by different countries, thus resulting us to be influenced by their culture, languages, and many more. But what's the thing that didn't change at all is our values as Filipinos. We remain to acquire the attributes of being hospitable, respectful, optimistic, and many more. And these values of ours have been passed from generation to generation, and up until now, we still have that practices. And these values have put color to our culture because it makes us Filipino unique and distinct from some other cultures. The importance of Filipino values are not only for us to be known as Filipinos or how it serves as our identity, but it was way more than that. The core Filipino values help us in our everyday life. It serves as our guide in making decision making by knowing what to do, how to react, and where to go next that align to the value system that we have. Sometimes, if we are faced with difficult situations, we Filipinos would react to it by simply being optimistic and happy. Like, for instance, in calamities and natural disaster, we would stay happy and positive for a reason that we are alive and ready to stand up again after our fall. Because we Filipinos believe that frowning about our problems won't solve it or make anything better. So by staying positive will somehow help us in making decisions deliberately and heaving the burdens on our shoulder. So that's the importance of Filipino values and virtues.
Good day, everyone. Now, we will proceed to highlight the Southeast Asian tradition and tribalism and animism. So, what is tribalism? Tribalism is particularly crucial for understanding Kapwa because it is reasonable to assume that Kapwa was originally used only within the tribe. Someone who belonged to another tribe was not considered Kapwa. Also, tribal culture contributes to the emphasis on family, clan, and ritual kinship ties, as most tribe members are blood related or ritually related in some way. The entire family and tribal mentality is concerned with survival and flourishing. It is something that heavily influences the relational dynamics of the Filipino values because it promotes the good of the group rather than the good of individuals. To continue, according to Scott 1982, it is demonstrated that tribal society was much more fluid and adaptable than medieval society. However, it is the general characteristics of these societies that are most important to us, not the details. In this sense, the most important thing is the tribe, which is strengthened and solidified through the members' family and kinship relationships. Also, tribe is defined to a single identity because the survival of the tribe is paramount. Virtues such as courage in the context is courage for the sake of the tribe's survival. Well, let's proceed to define what is animism. So, understanding Loob requires an understanding of animism. Supernatural interconnectedness of things is emphasized in animism. The animist hasn't yet made a clear distinction between yourself and the world of phenomena, but according to Barfield, it refers to this as primary participation. The animist was so entwined, woven and intertwined with the world around that some could identify with or possessed by an animal totem spirit. Ancestors or nature spirits will be absorbed into the cosmic whole after death. The most prominent figure in Philippine animism is the babaylan, or the priestess, who serve as bridges and mediators between humans and natural world spirits.
The significant influence and similarity of Filipino culture to Western culture. So we all know that in our Philippine history, our country has been colonized for 100 of years by the foreign countries. So in the Western account, which is the Spanish colony and the American soldier. So in this discussion, we will talk about what are those influence, traditions, and concepts that until now we adopt. The fact that the Philippines culture is very diverse because of the different backgrounds that encounter of the Filipinos before. First, in the Spanish Catholic tradition, way back in the year 1521, when Ferdinand Magellan and Spanish soldiers and missionaries came to our country. It is the time which is also the beginning of introducing us to Christianity and religion. It guided us Filipino regarding the ethical concept and expanded us by educating through the source of Christian doctrine. This is the first book that established in the Philippines in the 333 years of Spanish colonization. Instead of learning the Spanish language, they decided to translate it to our native language due to some reason to preserve the language that Filipino use. It is an important event because the history of Spanish colonization in the Philippines has a big contribution to the written history of the Philippines. The text and translation lead to the sense of identity of the Philippines, such as making of maps of the islands or cartography, and through the documentation of the various language of the Philippines. In the American modern tradition account, it comes up that in general they have the most positive image among Filipinos. The public American cultural influence in Hollywood and through the internet. In the particular, it It is thought that the American development of a public education system and a democratic government are quite good and impactful. American has been established a university in the year 1908 called the University of Philippines or UP. It is a public school where even a poor people can join and have proper education since they add the English language to teach us with the Native American teachers and utilizing the textbooks to help Filipinos to develop an English language skills which is until now in our generation. Besides of Tagalog or Filipino language, English is also included as our main language in the Philippines.
According to a social cultural research in California State University, Bakersfield, Filipinos have a distinct Asian background with a strong Western tradition. The modern Filipino culture developed through the influence from Chinese traders, Spanish conquerors, and American rulers. Most of the Filipinos are known to their hospitality, warm-heartedness, and their very own way of welcoming the guests, be it from their homeland or foreign land. Filipinos firmly believe that their country has one of the best values and virtues in the time period. Although being colonized by several countries, many of these practices from their ancestors remain intact and still practiced. Various Filipino cultures and traditions have been removed, revised, added, and mixed with other extending cultures from other foreign countries that visited and colonized the country. However, few of them remain distinct, strong, and very Filipino. One of it is their very own concept of Kapwa. It means the unity of the self and others. The English others is actually used in the opposition to the self and implies the recognition of the self as a separate identity. However, in the Filipino culture, kapwa is a recognition of shared identity, an inner self shared with others. This concept has been adapted naturally to each and every member of the generation, in which made many Filipino naturally friendly and hospitable. Filipinos also have different sets of core values in which help them drive their lives and remain their personal principle reasonable. Family oriented, humor, and positivity, flexibility, adaptability, discipline, creativity, education and multilingualism, religious adherence, and last but not the least, hospitality. These are some of the most common practice and applied core values that every Filipino family have. Because of these, it made a great and significant effect and influence in their lives. Many thrived and survived. However, many people suffered due to some malpractices and wrong ways of applying it. This causes a ripple effect that made the Philippines stagnant for a very long time, leading to the current conditions that the nation have been internally suffering from generation to generation. The Director of Global Business Engagement, Jenny Fahutag, stated in one of her articles that the Philippines has a very unique culture due to the influences of colonization in the surrounding countries. Filipino people are very hardworking and strive to make life better for the next generation of their family. It is a country that has varied cultural influences. Most of these influences are results of the previous colonization, deriving mainly from the culture of Spain and the United States. Despite all of these influences, the old Asian culture of Filipinos have been retained and are clearly seen in their very way of life, beliefs, and customs. Wherever you go, Filipino culture is very evident and has largely been appreciated and even applauded in many parts of the world. The melting pot theory that is evident in this culture makes this country a vibrant, exciting, and diverse place to live and visit. It has been evolving over the course of 100 years. It progressed from established tribes to a more advanced culture, such as regional location, population expansion, education system, and these happened during and after Spanish colonialism, the Spanish-American War, and the presence of the U.S. military in the region during World War II, and several more influences on today's culture throughout the Philippines.